with me again. I am so glad that Russell took the time of his busy schedule and joined me today for this quick update of what is going on in Donetsk, in Donbass region. As we know, it's a war-torn area. Recently, the region joined Russia and Russian Federation, but for years, that region was under Ukrainian shelling as a part of Eastern Ukraine. The Eastern Ukraine part changed. Now the region is a part of Russian Federation, but the shelling never stopped. So Russell, Texas Bentley, a former Texan who lives now in what is a Russian Federation territory in Donbass region, former Eastern Ukraine, tells us everything as he lives every day under the shelling from Ukrainian troops for the last almost 9 years. Hello, Russell, welcome.
Hello, Elena. Glad to see you again. I'm always happy to meet and talk with you. And I really appreciate your support and the good work that you're doing, getting the truth out about the situation here.
Thank you. Russell, let me get your opinion. What do you think about the Leopards being released? What do you think about German tanks going to Ukrainian land to fight Russians again? What do you think?
I think that it's a criminally insane idea. Of course, it's coming from the United States that's put pressure on the Germans to do this. It's a terrible idea that can have some very dangerous consequences for people all around the world, including in the United States. It's Maria Zakharova, the spokeswoman for the Russian Foreign Ministry, gave a very, very passionate speech today in response to this development. And it's on Earl Grey's YouTube channel. So I strongly encourage everyone.
Yes, I've seen portions of it. Yeah.
It's very powerful. It's got English subtitles and English voiceover. And, she really explains the difference between, the Soviet citizens and the Nazis of the 21st or the 20th century. There are also the difference between the Russians and the Nazis of the 21st century. But, it is the escalations, the provocations that the Western Nazis have been doing this entire time, since 2014, and it's just gotten more intense, more blatant and impudent, and it's not going anywhere good. I mean, the 100 tanks or whatever. Actually, I think that it was going to be a total of 88 tanks from Germany, which people that know about Nazis know that one of their little secret symbols is 88, because H is the 8th letter of the alphabet, and it's HH for Heil Hitler. So, I mean, I don't understand how, the German government and the German people can already forget what happened last time German tanks were killing Russians. It did not end well in fact, it did end well for good German people, because they themselves were liberated from Nazi oppression. And, if the people of Germany allow Nazis, either German Nazis or the descendants of German Nazis or American Nazis, to rule their country, they'll be liberated again by the Russian army, or perhaps incinerated by a Russian nuclear bomb, because that's where this can go. And really, every escalation, every provocation from the West just brings us closer to doomsday, to a point where nuclear exchange can kill everybody.
Russell, if you watched Victoria Nuland the other day, came out and she said that Russia is a criminal, Putin is a criminal, and if Russia wants sanctions lifted, it has to give back all the territories to Ukraine, basically withdraw all the troops, give back all the territories, And then the Kremlin spokesman, Mr. Peskov, came out and he said, it doesn't sound like West is serious. It sounds like there is no room for negotiation with this quote unquote proposal from Mrs. Newland. And basically this looks like an ultimatum. What do you think, Russell? How can Russia negotiate if Russia now incorporated Donbass region through its constitution into Russian Federation? And American top diplomatic State Department official comes up and says that if you want sanctions lifted, then give up all the territories. I mean, is it even negotiating like a sentence, or is this is pretty much a capitulation offer?
I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, this kind of garbage from the U.S. State Department is only for the consumption of idiots in the United States who believe anything that their government says. And it's, I mean, and again, it's a slap in the face of Russia. It's a provocation. They certainly know without question that Russia's not giving anything back. You know, in fact, Russia's going to take as much of Ukraine as it wants. And there's nothing that NATO can do about it, you know, other than starting a nuclear war, you know, or starting a war in Europe that Russia will go all the way to the English Channel. You know, so, you know, I mean, because of course Russia's not going to give back Donetsk now, but without any question, they're never, ever, ever going to give back Crimea. That's a strategic, militarily strategic area for them. The naval base there is their only warm water port. It is necessary for the survival of Russia that Russia controls that port. And in fact, you know, a lot of people don't know, you know, they think that, oh, Russia, you know, took over Crimea or something. The people of Crimea voted. There was already 40,000 Russian soldiers there as security for this major Russian naval base that had been, since the end of the Soviet Union, had been, there was a treaty between Russia and Ukraine that Russia paid them $100 million a year to lease that Navy base. And under that treaty, Russia was allowed to have, it was either 20 or 40,000. I think it was 40, but it could have been 20,000 troops stationed in Crimea, you know, to protect and operate that naval base. So there's no way, there's zero chance that Russia is ever going to give back Crimea. There's zero chance that the Ukrainian army can ever take it from Russia. There's zero chance that Ukraine plus NATO can ever take it from Russia. So, I mean, it's just, you know, it's, you know, to me, I always say that the number one foundational rule about politics, and it applies to everybody, you know, the Kremlin as much as the White House or Buckingham Palace or anywhere else, what they say means nothing. What they do says everything.
Russell, yesterday, I believe, I think it was Melnick again, or maybe Kuleba. I mean, there is so many of those guys, the talking heads of Ukrainian Zelensky regime. One of them came and said that now Great Britain has to provide Ukraine with submarines so they can go and sink Black Sea Fleet in Crimea, Russian Black Sea Fleet. I mean, what do you think these people are hell-bent to get us into the nuclear war or like annihilate the world? I mean, now they want submarines.
Really? I mean, and, you know, it is only, I mean, submarines are a strategic launch platform for ballistic missiles and nuclear missiles. So, I mean, and I mean, it's just, it is insane that the West provides any weapons at all for this Nazi regime. And, you know, the more, and that's that's one of the things why, you know, sometimes I'm critical about the way that the special operation has gone, is because it seems to me, you know, beyond any doubt that the longer this war goes on, the more dangerous it will become. And so, you know, I mean, and I'm sure that the Russian general staff and the guys in the Kremlin know more than I do. And I'm sure there's things that I don't know or understand that also have to be considered by them. But, you know, it's simple to me, you know, it's the longer the war goes on, the more dangerous it's going to be. And so the quicker that we finish it with a decisive victory of at least, as far as Kiev and Russian control of everything east of Kiev, you know, I mean, for a long time, you know, a lot of people, they talk about, oh, well, the Dnieper River will be the final, you know, borderline or whatever. But you can't have, you know, war criminals, Nazis, you know, and terrorists on the other side of a river that's the main waterway of your country. You know, they can poison the water. They've done that already. You know, they can, you know, interfere with the, you know, navigation, you know, the shipping along the river. And so, you know, we're going to have to go further than the Dnieper River. And to me, I think from where Chernobyl is, the western side of Chernobyl, down to the northern tip of Moldova, you know, and that's some of it is west of the Dnieper. But once you get it down, you know, that much under Russian control, you know, the Hungarians can have a piece. The Polish are already working on getting. I mean, you understand that the Ukrainian Rada has already passed a law giving Polish citizens equal rights.
Special status of Polish citizens in Ukraine. Yes, they did.
Mm-hmm. And Poland is going to take a hefty chunk of Western Ukraine, which there's really not much there except crazy Nazis and mountains and some goats. And so, you know, they can have it, you know, but Russia is going to have to take the significant part of Ukraine, you know, the industrialized part, the agricultural part, the cultural, historical parts. Russia's going to have to take control of them, you know, denazify and demilitarize them, as they said was their original goals. They have to do that.
You know, Russell, I think it will be really difficult to denazify because this year, remember how we talked about it used to be United States and Ukraine. One time there was Canada, who always voted in UN against Russia's resolution that was written to condemn glorification of fascism. But this year, my understanding, there is 50 countries that voted against it, together with United States and Ukraine, which used to be the lone two, you know, reeds in the dune, but now there is like 50 of them. So are we like in the insanity
that is correct? But you understand that, first of all, the 50 new countries that voted this year against the Russian resolution condemning the glorification of Nazism, you know, first of all, they're tiny, you know, I mean, you know, the honest word is insignificant. You know, they have, you know, minuscule GDPs. They have, you know, a couple of 100,000 citizens. You know, they're off on some island somewhere. You know, I mean, and that doesn't mean that they support Nazism. It means that they either got bribed or pressured by, you know, American diplomats. They said, look, we'll build you the new airport if you vote with us on this, you know. And I mean, what it really does is it shows, you know, the extent that the United States has become, again, also a puppet of that the UN has become a puppet of the United States. I mean, last year at the General Assembly, the United States was refusing to give visas to Russian diplomats to even come for the General Assembly. And that's, I mean, the United Nations is quickly becoming obsolete, especially this thing when they had the IAEA, the Atomic Energy Commission inspectors go to the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant in the in summer, and the dude, the chief of the IAEA actually went there with a team. They were there for a few days, and then they left, and they said, yes, it's very, very dangerous. The shelling with heavy artillery of nuclear power plants where there's nuclear waste stored, that's extremely dangerous. It could be a global catastrophe. Oh, but we don't know who's doing the shelling.
Of course, they can't tell. Yeah, right. Yeah, Russell, it just reminds me, the Norishkin, I believe he is the top spy, Russian top intelligence official, came out the other day and he said that they have credible evidence that Ukraine hides HIMARS and heavy weapons inside a nuclear power plants. So what could go wrong? You know what I mean? They shell power plants and then they store weapons at the nuclear power plants. So they obviously are not concerned with the nuclear war and disaster and a human catastrophe. Only we are, and Russia is.
Well, I mean, I think that that report is accurate and correct. I mean, obviously, they are, hiding their most powerful weapons at a nuclear power plant because they know that's the one place that the Russians will never shell, because the Russians aren't going to, I mean, first of all, when you have a whole bunch of artillery shells, if you hit it, it's going to make a much bigger explosion than just, one artillery shell, so they know, I mean, for the Russians, of course, because of their morality, but also just out of practical self-preservation, if they blow up one of these Ukrainian nuclear power plants, a lot of that fallout's going to go towards Russia too,
Russell, how is situation in Donetsk? Do you guys still have difficulties on water shortages, and are they still shelling daily, or how does that situation update? Give us some. It's
things are still pretty tough here. I mean, the shelling is not as intense as it was, a month or two ago. I mean, since the beginning of the year, Russia has regained quite a bit of the military initiative, on the Donetsk front or the Donbass front, and that's a good thing. And it's kept the Ukrainian army busy trying to defend itself against Russian advances, which are being made all along the Donbass front. Not as much as we wish they were being made, but the guys, the Russians, the LDPR soldiers, the Chechens, Wagner, they're doing good work these days, and they're keeping the Ukrops busy, either, trying to defend their positions or retreating or dying, so they don't have a lot of time. I mean, they still do. They still put some bombs in the city of Donetsk or else other civilian areas around Donetsk every day, but not as heavily and not as ruthlessly as they were a couple of months ago. The water situation is still pretty difficult. We in the center right where we are, we're very fortunate because we're in a geographically low area. So the water pipes here tends to have water in them more often than a lot of other places. In Petrovsky district, it's very difficult. There, the schedule is supposed to be once every third day you get water in the evening. But in Petrovsky, it tends to be for about 2 hours, and that's it every third day, there are still areas that just don't get water at all. It's very, that kind of stuff. It's, they say you never miss the water until the well runs dry. So, just things like, of course, everyone here, they buy their drinking water, but, to wash your hands, to take a shower, to wash the dishes, stuff like that, to do laundry,
Basic.
and for us, we're pretty fortunate. We have an old Lada Niva that still gets around by some miracle, but, we can take, 25, or 50 liter bottles of water and go fill them up at the river or at the spring, and then bring them all the way back. If we had to walk there, it would be tough because it's, a kilometer or two away, but driving, it's not so bad. But then you understand, we live on the 3rd floor, and we don't have an elevator, so we have to carry everything up the stairs, and that, I guess it's good exercise, but it gets old after a while, and people,
That's true.
People don't understand how much, having, and not just running water, but, hot water too. That's become like a real luxury for us, because in our apartment, we have like an apartment's individual water heater for the apartment. But if the water pressure is low, the water heater doesn't kick on, so sometimes, we have to take a bath, with like heat up 4 big pots of water on the stove and then, go stand in the bathroom and just pour water over your head like that,
Russell, I see you have your windows covered. I was wondering always when we talk, it's evening down there in Donetsk. Do you guys have to cover your windows? Do you have them taped? Do you have sirens when they have like the alert for the incoming? How do you guys do with this?
No, generally, we don't have like air raid sirens. Interestingly, there was a Ukrainian Air Force jet that was shot down today over the DPR.
And DPR is Donetsk People Republic, for those who do not know, which is the area where Russell now lives, which used to be Eastern Ukraine, now became part of Russia after referendum of 2022.
Mm-hmm. Donetsk is the main city. The People's Republic is basically the state that used to be the state of Donetsk. There's about 2 million people that live in DPR, and maybe 1 million that live in the Lugansk People's Republic. But, today a Ukrainian jet was flying over our land, not over the city of Donetsk, but not far away. And our air defense guys did shoot it down, but the good thing is we shot it down. The bad thing is that it's flying over, our neighborhood,
Million, yes.
But the main thing that the Ukrainians attack us with, they have used ballistic missiles, Tochka-U ballistic missiles, on multiple occasions. They use the HIMARS rockets from the Americans that are also very dangerous. And our air defense can take those rockets out. They can take out the Tochka-U's. But like say a regular artillery shell, it's too small, and it's coming too fast. You can't hit it. Another thing is the Grad missiles. When a Grad is very, it's a truck that can fire 40 rockets in 20 seconds. It has a range of like 18 or 20 kilometers, and they're not like super accurate, but, wherever those 40 rockets hit, pretty much everybody within a couple of football fields, that's outside is going to be dead. It's an area weapon.
And I think,
and when it's 40 rockets coming in 20 seconds, it's just like it overwhelms any air defense. There's not, you can't hit 40 rockets in a 5 seconds window of opportunity that they're flying over. So we do get hit. I mean, and these things, they come too fast. I mean, if there's no use in an air raid siren, because by the time they knew that they were coming, they would be here before they could even turn on the siren.
And Russell, I've heard also the reports from Donetsk, and I also have seen a French citizen protesting his government sending French Caesars. Are those howitzers French Caesars, or are they rockets? What are they? Because I've seen reports that Donetsk people where you live were killed with the cartridges of these weapons that appear to be French supplied Caesar.
That is correct. It is a self-propelled 155 millimeter artillery cannon. They have been used against the civilians here. Was provided to the Ukrainian Nazis by the French, who again apparently have forgotten their history. And not only that, what the German Nazis did to the French people when they occupied France, but the fact that, Napoleon tried to attack Russia once, and the Russians ended up in Paris. It's I mean, so there's their history. If they want to have Russian soldiers in Paris again, go ahead and keep sending more and bigger weapons from France to Ukraine. Nobody here is forgetting about all the countries that are sending weapons. No one here is forgetting about it. No one here is going to ever say, well, it was no big deal, just a few civilians got killed or something like that. No, it's like this, if in the mafia, for example, and the Don, the big kingpin guy, and he says to his hitman, hey, I want you to go kill this guy over here. Here's the orders, here's the information on where he lives, here's a gun, and here's the money I'm going to pay you to do it. Well, under law in pretty much every country, certainly in the United States, the guy who gives the order is as guilty as the guy who pulls the trigger. And if a different guy gives him the gun and knows what he's going to do with it, that guy's just as guilty too. And if a different guy pays him, that guy's just as guilty too. And if a different guy says, hey, look, he's in that house over there, that guy's guilty too. So what's the difference if the United States, tells the Ukrainians, okay, there's a bunch of Russians in this college in Makiivka, or says, let's terrify the city of Donetsk today. The people there, don't seem like they're scared enough, So let's go pop off a couple right in the middle of town. Let's go blow up a church or a school or a hospital. I mean, what is the legal or moral difference between that or some mafia dude sending hitmen to murder innocent people somewhere else? There is none. There's no difference.
And Russell, I was wondering about Russia kept saying and keep referencing these red lines. And for the last year of when Russian special military operation has started, Russia has said, if you hit Crimea Bridge, it's a red line. If you do this, it's a red line. If you do this, and Russia said that they will not exchange Azov Nazis. And then they did exchange Azov Nazis in the prisoners exchange. And Russia said a couple of other things. So from what I hear, and I see different news sources in Russian and in Ukrainian, and of course in American news sources, recently one of the Russian spokespeople came out, and I'm not sure if it was Peskov or someone else, and he said something about, if you supply tanks, this is more intense color, red line. I mean, do you guys over there who are part of Russia now are getting a little impatient with Russia moving its red lines and not calling out the West blatantly and NATO for being basically collaborators in this war and being party to this war and moving these red lines and changing the gradient intensity of the red lines? Or do people think that maybe Russia knows what it's doing, and if Russia tries to be an adult in the room and not aggravate West by taking more decisive steps to call the West out on their supplies of weapons and basically participation in this war in a very active way? Annalena Baerbock, German foreign minister, came the other day and she said, we shouldn't fight with each other here in EU because we are at war with Russia. I mean, like, really, Germany? Your foreign minister just declared to the whole world that you are at war with Russia. That's like declaration of war. And so my question to you, do people in Donetsk believe that maybe Russia is being too nice, too patient, too much reserved on calling these people out, or maybe taking more harsh and decisive efforts so the West really does stop playing this game that, oh, we're not party to this conflict, but then, oh, we're at war with Russia?
Yes, in fact, many people, including myself, have been very disappointed and confused by some of the incidents that you just mentioned and the way that Russia reacted or failed to react to them. You know, so it's like this, you know, half of the people here, again, like me, they say the sooner the war is over, the better. Let's do it, whatever has to be done. And then maybe half the people here say, well, you know, there's things that they know in the Kremlin or in the general staff that we don't know. And I'm sure, you know, and I'm kind of like on both sides myself, because on the one hand, you know, it was to release those Azov Nazis, you know, that my friends captured. You know, it was Vostok Brigade was one of the main groups that liberated Azovstal and Mariupol and took those Nazis prisoner, those Azov Nazis prisoner. And good men died, you know, or were maimed for life in that operation. And those are the most, you know, ruthless and evil Ukrainians that there are. And to have them released was, you know, it was not just foolish, it was disgraceful. And I can tell you something else. It was a very dangerous move too, because the thing is, the Ukrainians and the Americans who own and control them wanted specifically those Azov Nazis back, because you know what? There's only a certain type of person. There's only a certain number of people that someone can say, go kill that whole family, including the children, you know, and make a video about it. Go torture this guy to death. Go nail him to a cross and then set him on fire. Not everybody can do that, thank God. But the Azov guys are exactly the ones that can. And so their masters, their owners want them back so they don't have to go through the years of training and brainwashing that it takes to dehumanize someone to the point where they can do that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was, you know, and the thing about in Donetsk, people wonder, I mean, especially, you know, after the retreats from Kherson and Izium, you know, Zaporozhye, you know, people here were pretty worried about, well, hey, are they gonna, you know, because in those places, the Russians came in, they said, all right, we're here, we liberated it. Here, have a Russian passport. You know, here, have some Russian human aid. And then later they, for whatever reason, they said, sorry, we got to go. Good luck. And then those people came in and were, you know, arrested, tortured, slaughtered. You know, I'm sure hundreds of people have been murdered in those cities since the Russians left.
So to some extent, there is no justice, because I remember Russia and Donetsk People Republic leader, Mr. Pushilin, they promised tribunals, and I've seen videos that they were preparing some type of setup to conduct these tribunals. Do you still believe that there will be tribunals? or all the Azov battalion, the ones who were in prisoners of war, being pretty much exchanged and given back to Ukraine? Because here, the Azov battalion now tours United States Congress. They meet with our congressmen. We give them honor. They're treated as liberators.
They were in Israel.
In Israel as well. I was just going to say, one of them recently toured Israel. That's, to me, is the most despicable and disgusting thing that we could do with people who just few years ago, our own United States Congress was condemning and making sure that money does not go to Azov battalion because of their association with the Nazi ideology. But what's changed? Now Russia is the evil, Putin is aggressor, and Azov Nazis, we love you, come to the United States people's house, we'll give you honors, Pelosi and Biden will wait on you. But to me, the fact that they are now running around the world getting donations and accolades for what? For these crimes of atrocities against people of Mariupol and people of Donbass, that now it seems like we'll never see the light of day for justice. I mean, is Russia giving up on trying to serve justice, or I don't know.
Think so. I don't think they've given up, but I mean, to explain these kind of questions, these seeming contradictions, like the Russians retreating, like the release of these Nazi prisoners and stuff, the moving back of the red lines. I think there's got to be something, much, very, that regular people don't know about, but that is a consideration that the Kremlin and the Russian general staff have to deal with. It could easily be a biological weapon. I mean, the United States, they could just say, hey, look, you know how crazy and evil we are, and if you push this thing too hard, if you beat the Ukrainians too easily, we're going to release this, this real virus, something that, will be like the plague or, smallpox or something.
Or like you said before, something, I remember Russian Defense Minister Shoigu was calling our Lloyd Austin here in the United States and claiming that they had credible information about Zelensky regime trying to set off the dirty bomb there and do the nuclear disaster in Ukraine. And this is when neither Russia or United States really talked at the time, a few months ago. The Russian defense minister obviously was concerned and had information about this potential nuclear dirty bomb going off in Ukraine that he called our American counterpart of his. So you're right, there may be some information behind the scenes that people, of course, do not know and not privy, but I was just wondering how the Donetsk people, and you pretty much answered that, yeah, people are patient, but they're also impatient about moving of some of these red lines and would like to see this be done sooner and the war over than later, because every time, I think every day goes by, there is more people who are dead. There is more Ukrainian soldiers are dead. There's more Russian people are dead. There are more people who are grabbed by SBU and accused of being quote unquote pro-Russian. There are more priests in Ukraine who are thrown out of their Orthodox churches on the street in the freezing cold by armed forces of Zelensky and their henchmen, hunting down quote unquote pro-Russian priests and revoking their citizenship, Ukrainian citizenship from them. There is parishioners who are suffering because they cannot go and worship to the style and the way of their confession and their faith in Ukraine. So the sooner this will be over, the better for every side, for everyone. And of course, us as an American citizen here myself, I would like to see this over because I don't want my taxpayer dollars being used to instill the blood on my hands and our hands as Americans for the deaths of Russians and deaths of Ukrainians and perpetuating of this Nazi-style regime that Zelensky has evoked in Ukraine that glorifies Stepan Bandera, Hitler collaborator, Ukrainian nationalist, who slaughtered hundreds of thousands, Jews, Russians, Romani people, and his followers are now killing Russian or ethnic Russian or Romani people, you name it, even Ukrainian people who do not agree with their neo-Nazi style ideology. So the sooner this wraps up, there will be much better. So if you were advisor to Biden now, put your advisor to Biden hat, what would you tell Biden to do? Besides, I'm sure you would like to tell him something juicy, like a couple of words that, but what would you advise him to have this getting wrapped up?
Well, I mean, and of course, Biden, you know, I mean, in the early years of this war, in 2014, 2015, while Obama was still president, Biden was the big guy, the main guy in Ukraine. He was the guy that made all the decisions. He was the guy that told them what to do. He was the guy who ordered the people burned in Odessa. He's the guy who ordered MH17 shot down. I mean, but now, I mean, you know, I don't know,
Russell,
whatever.
sounds like you know some intelligence information directly from some alphabet letter agencies here from United States. I haven't heard that particular insight. Keep going. I like it. I like the way this is going.
I mean, because nothing was or is done since Maidan in Ukraine except on the express orders of the United States.
And Maidan is a coup of 2014 in Ukraine, in case somebody doesn't know what Maidan is.
That's right. And since then, the United States has controlled completely, you know, every aspect of the Ukrainian military and government and society in general, you know, economy, the whole nine yards. And, you know, Biden, I don't know what drugs he was on, but, you know, his mind pretty much dissolved, you know, after the Obama administration during the 4 years that Trump was in office, who I consider to be hardly better than Biden, but at least Trump did save us from the President Hillary Clinton nightmare. But, you know, Biden is basically, you know, the same people who own Hillary Clinton own Biden, you know, and, you know, these are truly evil people. You know, the word satanic is not inappropriate, you know, and it's coming out more and more that what these people do is beyond the imagination of normal, decent people. You know, they can't even imagine it, much less, you know, think about actually doing it themselves. It's like I was talking to a friend of mine that I served with in the war back in 2015. And, I mean, and he was a real tough soldier. He was a commander, but he did his work from the front line, and he got his hands dirty a lot of times, you know, in the actual war. And I was talking to him about how, you know, since the special operations started, you know, all these foreign doctors have started coming back into Ukraine and harvesting organs, human organ trafficking, which is a huge business. And Ukraine is one of the main places where they're supplied from these days, you know. And, you know, and I'm like, yeah, you know, some of these guys, you know, they're not even dead. They're just wounded. But, you know, they still go ahead and take their heart and their lungs and their kidneys and their liver. And this guy who was a tough guy, I mean, a good-hearted guy, but, you know, a real tough soldier and expert soldier. And he's like, dude, we be meaning like, you know, regular Russian people, you know, decent, you know, DPR defenders, because we could never even have thought of that, you know, and it's true, you know, I mean, so the things they're doing, I mean, you know, Ukraine is one of the main supply points for and transport points for human trafficking, sex slavery, which is mostly, and it's, the people that are human trafficked, which is millions of people around the world every year. But, the majority, there's like maybe 20% that's actual men, that they're going to make go like dig a ditch or, I don't know, feed the pigs or something. But 80% is women and children.
I've seen when the refugees started pouring to Europe, there were reports on Polish television, and some world media picked up some of it by saying that Ukrainian women, be careful because they are being pushed and accosted at the border with their children into unknown cars offering them a ride, either across the border or offering them the ride to like the nearest whatever, I don't know, hospital, shelter. And these people are never seen and heard again. And there was even a report that there will be a woman approaching a woman offering a ride. And then they will get into the car, and the car has no number plates, no anything. And who knows where these people are taken. And that's at the border. So yes, and the article came to say that the refugees crisis coming from Ukraine is the human traffickers' holiday. They were feasting on these newcomers, and we don't even have reports of how many people were trafficked because of it. So the sooner this ends, there would be, I think, a relief for entire world. But sounds like, Russell, your advice to Biden would be repent. Sounds like that's the the advice you would give him.
I wouldn't have any advice for Biden because he probably wouldn't understand me. My advice would be to the good and wise American people, which would be understand who your enemy is, what they are, and how you're going to have to deal with them. And, I think, in my opinion, probably 97% of the American people are just, they're too stupid, miseducated, uneducated. And the problem with being stupid as opposed to just ignorant, in which of course they're ignorant too. You see where they can't even, you ask them where is Ukraine on a world map and they point to Australia.
They can't find it, yeah.
That's it's like you can't even read or what, and so
it's our education system. It's our famous tax dollars of buying the best education possible, that we have our people can't find Ukraine on the map, but they're okay with sending billions to who knows where.
Well, and that's the thing. Most of the people are, I would say, beyond redemption. The majority of Americans, I would say, sadly, are beyond redemption. They're so stupid that not only do they know how stupid they are, but they also think they know everything. And, it's like this guy on the radio the other day. I was on Sputnik Radio in Washington, D.C. And there was two hosts, and one guy was friendly and the other guy was Carmine from New Jersey. And he was like trying to dig into me from the beginning of the show. I was on for like 45 minutes, and I told him, I said, look, and at one point we're talking about, the war or history or something. I said, the Russians did 80% of the fighting in the Second World War. It was 80% of the German army was destroyed on the eastern Russian front. And, England and Canada and Australia and the United States, all those guys, they did 20% of the work, all of them together. And this dude, he says to me like, well, I think that's propaganda. And I think that you're just falling for, historical revisionists and stuff, man. And it's like, so here's this idiot that doesn't even know, that has no idea whatsoever. And yet he's trying to tell me that I'm wrong, and eventually, and I laid into him pretty good. He's lucky we weren't sitting across the table from each other, or I'd have at least said some less nice words, but, and eventually he did. He's like, after the commercial or something, like, well, I did a little looking up, and I discovered that you're right, that apparently the consensus is, and I'm like, ask 2 million dead German Nazi soldiers that are buried in Russian soil,
And Russell, quickly, as far as the Russian soil, did you watch how Russians are taking care of the graves of the German soldiers? I believe in Kursk, when there were like 50,000 of German soldiers that died, there was a mayor of that town having a video which he walks across the cemetery. All those graves are tidied up and taken care of. Russians are taking care of the German soldiers who came to kill them, basically. Hitler sent them there, and their graves. And in Baltic republics, Lithuania, Latvia, in Ukraine, they're fighting and vandalizing the graves of the Soviet army soldiers who fought against Hitler. It's insanity.
Who liberated their countries from Hitler.
Exactly. Those who liberated their countries, their graves are vandalized. But Russians who lost 27 or 26, whatever you pick your number, million people in the war, only official number, I believe an official is almost 46, 47 million. Russians have dignity and take care of the graves of the German soldiers who died on Russian soil, who basically came to capture them and their land. And we are talking about Russia is evil. I mean, and we're supposed to glorify the Nazis in Ukraine now. The world has gone mad. And you're right about American people, as far as, I don't know what the level of education is anymore, because obviously I didn't go to school other than the business side of the college. When I was a child, I grew up during the Soviet Union time, and that's where my education, primary schooling was, which I believe primary education is probably as important as the higher education. And of course, I graduated at university in that area as well. But if you think about American people, my heart actually goes to lots of Americans who believe that they're just too comfortable or too overworked to find out the truth for themselves, and they believe what TV tells them or what Biden tells them, and they think that whatever they hear is the truth, and they don't do their own research. And of course, I know they work hard, because our government here in the United States makes sure that we work hard to pay all the bills and to pay all the taxes, and then they throw our taxpayer dollars at Ukraine to do their little laundering operation there. So, yeah, American people better wake up. But I do understand that majority are asleep. Majority still believes TV news. A majority still believes Biden. Majority still is too comfortable. You see, learning the truth is uncomfortable, because truth is not pretty. And most people don't want to get out of that happy place to get into this.
I read a book once, an excellent book by a Christian psychiatrist, and it was called The People of the Lie by M. Scott Peck. And it was a study, it was a study from a Christian scientific perspective on human evil. And, he defined evil, I mean, and it's important to have like an understanding of what that word means. It doesn't just mean, somebody that's mean or something, picks on little kids or like that. But he defined it, in several different ways. But one way that was most striking for me, he defined evil as militant ignorance. And if that doesn't describe most Americans these days, then what does? They're militantly ignorant. They will fight you rather than listen to the real truth, and believing their lies. They have no problem, with bombing your civilians or destroying your economy or your country or anything like that. And this, this brilliant doctor and, very devout Christian, he said, this is the definition of what it is to be evil. So most of the people in America fit that definition these days. And I know that there's still
not everybody. Let's do some exceptions do exist, right?
Of course, no, and that's what I was getting ready to say is that there's I don't know, maybe hopefully there's 5% that are as good as the rest of them are evil. And if it's 5%, out of 350 million, you're still looking at 15 million people, which is a lot of people. And if they all got together,
go ahead,
they could do something.
I don't know if the rest are evil or just willfully ignorant or just overworked and just don't have time to pay attention, thinking that politicians will do their job. So why do I bother and find out what they're doing? And of course, politicians like it when nobody is watching them, right? Like, who was the famous, I think American politician said, who will watch the watchers, right? So
actually, it was an ancient Roman. I think it was like Cicero said, quis custodis custodia in Latin.
You're right. Somebody here in America must have repeated it. Yeah, go ahead. Yep. Yeah, but who will watch the watchers? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the main point is that, we have a window of opportunity right now. If all the good people in the world get together, pretty much immediately, because the opportunity is closing fast.
Well, Russell, we don't even have peace marches. What are you talking about? They're trying to get peace march in London, I've seen the other day, and they canceled it. And there is trying to have one in here. I mean, look, it's really, but on a good note, like what I was going to say, it's really like, look what happened during this disease that we're not going to mention, begins with the K or C, however you want to word it, right? When people protested that. And I think in defense of American people is American people are scared. They are scared to speak up. Russell, look what they did to people on January 6th. They're all in jail. They're walking there with some of them without even any conviction that's presented to them. And it's been how many years now? And the Congress people try to go visit those people. They're not allowed. I mean, they made this spectacle out of it to the extent that people are afraid to speak out. They're afraid to write a post on the Facebook or Twitter or YouTube because they will be banned. People are afraid to protest because then they will be labeled as some type of separatists and put in jail. I mean, in defense of American people, I understand that not everybody has the level of courage and ability to overcome some of these fears that our government certainly tries to keep us under. But I agree
with that. And I do understand that too. But I have to say that people, well, first of all, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice.
That's one of my favorite quotes. I love it. I was just going to bring that one up.
And, and I mean, and it's understandable, I mean, I have people in my family that have chosen ignorance, that have literally told me, I don't want to know, I mean, use those exact words. But the thing is, by making that choice, you pretty much, you give up your humanity. I mean, if you're not going to use your brain, then what do you have one for? If you're not going to use your spine, if you're just going to be a timid rabbit, then, I mean, if you're going to be a willing slave, then where's your humanity? And the thing is, it's, people don't want to know, because once you know, then you also understand you have a responsibility to do something. And if you know and you still don't do anything, then every morning when you get up and go brush your teeth, you know that you're looking at a coward in the mirror.
Yeah, and you know you should be doing something. Everybody can do something. Not everybody, like you said, could be a soldier. Remember our previous interview?
Sure,
You
of
said
course.
not everybody can be a soldier. You see, I'm quoting Russell now. Oh my gosh, you are famous, right? And you said nobody can do this or that, but do something. If you cannot do this, help some human aid, send some human aid, which I know you have a big human aid. I believe there is this organization called Donbass Human Aid, right?
Donbass Humanitarian Aid in Florida.
And I'll put the link in description to this video like I did to the previous one. But you're right, Russell, even people in Ukraine, because, you know, I watch both sides, and Russian, what people in Russia are saying, what people in Ukraine saying. A lot of people in Ukraine did not want to know, like you said just now, that your relatives didn't want, some of them didn't want to know. A lot of people in Ukraine did not, quote unquote, want to know that Donbass is getting shelled all this 9 years and counting. A lot of people in Ukraine said, well, that's their own fault. You know, they wanted to separate, or they wanted this. In other words, there was a faction of people in Ukraine who didn't want to know that their own citizens are getting killed. What can we ask of Americans who are not even living on the same continent with Donetsk, if there were Ukrainian people who would rather not know and go about their day thinking that Donetsk shelling and bombing and killings of civilians of, at the time, Ukraine by Ukraine doesn't exist?
Well, you know, I mean, the people that don't want to know, unfortunately, one of the things they don't know is history, even the most simplest and basic history of even the Second World War, less than 100 years ago, and they still don't know anything at all about it. It's like this, you know, this radio host guy that I was on the radio with, you know. But the people in Germany who supported Hitler, who didn't want to know, you know, what the German army was doing in other countries, they, you know, and they ignored it, but it came back and made them suffer for their choice to be ignorant. The same thing with, you know, all the Jewish prisoners that were sent to the concentration camps that didn't want to know, that said, oh no, you know, it's going to be okay. You know, we're going to go somewhere and probably have to work hard, but, you know, they're not going to hurt us. As they, you know, as they're taken straight to gas chambers or out to Babi Yar, to a giant ditch where they're, you know, mown down with machine guns. You know, I mean, so it is, ignorance is a dangerous thing, you know,
dangerous,
and people that don't want to know need to actually do some serious thinking and saying, hey, you know, if I know, if I have to do something, you know, I could lose my job, I could lose my friends, you know. I mean, it's like the whole thing with that, you know, virus, you know, the things that, you know, split families and communities apart because, you know, one guy's for this and the other guy's for that. I mean, but the thing is, you have to understand what's going to happen if you don't know and if you don't do something. And it's getting close to that time. And if the American people that choose ignorance, you know, ignore what the criminals who own their government are doing, the provocations they're making against, you know, a nuclear-powered Russia.
Nuclear Russia, yes.
One morning, you know, or in
gone.
the middle of the night some night, the sun is going to start shining, and it's not going to be the sun.
Not going to be the sun. You're right. Like Scott Ritter says, the guy who speaks a lot on the subject, he's a former UN nuclear weapons and other weapons inspector. He says that we may not wake up tomorrow. This is how quickly this goes, and this is how dangerous it is. And American people better wake up and learn some truth, and whatever we can do something about it. Like Russell says, not everybody is built to be a soldier, but share some truth, find some truth, speak the truth, post about truth, like what Russell and I are doing, trying to bring some truth to the wider audience. from Ukraine, about Russia-Ukraine situation, about different perspectives, and our hopes that this truth reaches a lot of people who are willing to learn and wake up. Because like Julian Assange said, if lies can start the wars, then truth can stop the wars. And I thank Russell for being here with me today. And I hope you all enjoyed Russell's presence and him giving us his busy time schedule, a wonderful, gracious appearance today. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you very much, Lena. Thank you. Good luck to all good people. May God protect the innocent and the soldiers, and may the rest of us get everything we deserve.